Hey everybody, John Skiba here, and in this video I'm going to share with you why you should file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, who should file Chapter 7, and some of the consequences that come along with filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. But if this is your first time here to my YouTube channel, go ahead and click subscribe, check off the little bell. That way you'll be notified each and every week when I put out new videos that'll help you deal with your serious debt problem. All right, let's talk about Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Now, I'm recording this in February of 2021. With everything that's been going on with COVID-19, with political unrest, the change of the presidential administrations, there's still a lot of uncertainty in the economy, and we're seeing people who have been dealing with serious debt problems finally making the decision that they need to file for bankruptcy. In my practice, we're seeing quite a significant uptick over the last 30 to 60 days in the number of bankruptcy cases that people are filing and just the consultations coming in. So I thought I would talk a little bit about what the Chapter 7 process is like, why you should file it as far as what kind of situations usually warrant a Chapter 7 filing, talk about who should file it, because sometimes even if you need to file Chapter 7, it's not available, and then let's talk about some of the consequences. The first is why you would file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I always say no one wants to file for bankruptcy, but there are certain situations that just really that's the result that's going to lead to the quickest relief possible. The kind of debts that get dealt with in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy most effectively are unsecured debts. These are debts where there's no property or collateral attached to the loan, things like most credit cards, medical bills, personal loans. Those types of debts in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy will be eliminated completely. They'll be discharged through that process. You won't have any legal obligation to pay them going forward. However, secured debts like home loans and car loans, those debts do not go away in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Essentially, if you want to keep your car, if you want to keep your house, you're going to have to continue to make the monthly payment on it. The good thing though is, like, I have clients who will reach out to me who have car loans that they can't afford anymore. They can let the car go, they can surrender it through the bankruptcy, and then that debt will go away. So the car goes away, but so does the debt. Those are the kind of cases where Chapter 7 makes the most sense, when you're dealing with a lot of credit cards, a lot of medical bills, and you just simply aren't in a position to be able to pay them. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, how much debt do I need? There's no specific dollar amount that you have to have. I can tell you, obviously, at some point it doesn't become effective or it doesn't become useful, because most attorneys are going to charge somewhere around $2,000 plus just to file the case. But if you're dealing with an amount of debt that you feel like you can pay off reasonably in a 3 to 5 year period, then sometimes I'll say bankruptcy may not be the best option. You could look at things like debt settlement, or work with an attorney or some kind of agency to be able to try to get that resolved. However, if you're dealing with debt and your income situation is such that you don't think you're going to be able to pay that off anytime in the next few years, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy starts to make more sense. Let's talk about the who. So you're in this situation, you're dealing with a lot of debt, you're thinking, that sounds good, I need to get rid of these debts, I want to file a Chapter 7. Can you file? Now, back in 2005, they amended the bankruptcy code. So now they use what's called a means test. They're going to look at the amount of income that comes into your household, and they're also going to look at the number of people that live in your home. And depending on how many people live in your home and what your monthly income is, you may or may not qualify for a Chapter 7. So, for example, and this varies from state to state, and even within some states, there are different means tests. So, for example, in Arizona, where I practice law, for an individual, you can make roughly $52,000 a year and file a Chapter 7, or if you make less than about $4,300 per month for an individual. But let's say that it's a married couple, that jumps up to $65,000 a year, or about $5,400 a month. And then you start adding in dependents and even other people, maybe if they're not your children, people who live in the home, you can add those into the total number. For example, like a family of 8 living under the same household, they can make up to $122,000 a year, or about $10,200 per month, and still qualify for a Chapter 7. Now, you may be saying, hey, I make just a little bit over that. Does that mean I'm going to have to file Chapter 13, or I can't file bankruptcy? The good news is there's numerous deductions that we can make to get you below the means test, to get you to qualify, even if you're slightly above those numbers that I'm quoting you here. Little asterisks. These numbers change all the time. They change them throughout the year. They're based, the U.S. Department of Justice puts out these numbers through their trustee program. So like I said, I'm recording this in February of 2021. If you're listening to this much in the future, those numbers may and likely will have changed. But even if your income is slightly above it, we can deduct things like your car payments, house payments, mortgage house payments, taxes, some insurances, medical expenses. Those types of things can be deducted from your total income to get you below those that means test limit. So if you're right on the edge, that's a good time to meet with a bankruptcy attorney, have them walk you through that process and determine if you still qualify to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Let's talk about some of the consequences of filing Chapter 7. A Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing will stay on your credit report for 10 years from the date that you filed it with the court. Now, if you look at your credit report, there's a public record section. That's where it's going to show up. It's going to show up that you filed a bankruptcy there. Now, I actually had a call this morning where someone's asking, is there ways to get that off early? There's no legitimate way that I am aware of to get a bankruptcy off your credit in less than 10 years. I'm sure I'm going to hear people in the comments, we're going to get bombarded with some of these things. I'd be highly skeptical of those things, because if the information is correct that's showing up in your credit report, then it's difficult to get that off without there being some kind of shady business going on there. But it stays on for 10 years. But the good news is it's not going to impact your ability to take out loans and really to recover from it. It's not going to take a full 10 years. Like FHA, they will do mortgage loans 2 years after a Chapter 7 filing, or after Chapter 7 discharge, I should say, at the end. Other lenders are 3 to 4 years. For good or for bad, credit cards and car loans are available almost immediately after your filing. You're just going to get really bad interest rates early on, but the further you get away from that date, the better off you're going to be. So I hope that answers some of the questions you have about Chapter 7 bankruptcy. If you're finding yourself in that situation, my recommendation is to get as much information as possible before making that decision. It does. It's a big decision that will last for a long time. 10 years it stays on your credit report. So find out the information you need before making that decision. Thanks for watching today.